gave a pretty elaborate story. I didn't go into the details. There was a lot of evidence that showed the officer was lying. With that, and thank goodness his partner had his audio device on. The officer that lied, his audio recording was apparently not working. Funny enough, Mr. Kevin slipped and fell down the stairs in November last year, and his wife called 911 for medical attention for Kevin. She called into the 911 call. West Sac PD sent 8 officers. They sent 8 officers to a slip and fall that was reported by his wife in November last year. And so it's so important because that they'd send 8 officers. How many of those officers do you think activated their audio recording device? 0. So the one thing that keeps those officers in check, that audio recording device, is at their leisure, and there's no quality control to make them turn it on. I saw the officer's report, which just said, I checked with the other officers, nobody turned their audio device on. And then the sergeant, whoever reviews that report, he signs at the bottom. So there's no, the administrative unit is broken there. And there needs to be some type of quality assurance that makes sure that quality control is being done, that's reviewing what the officers are doing. And that's a public oversight committee or an attorney auditor or somebody auditing them and making sure that they're actually doing quality control of their own officers. And that's what I really think that the West Sac PD really need.
Things are not going to change except politically. You heard the suggestion that if you get different council people in the city, you have a chance of doing away with the injunction, for example. I've been around for so long, I got an award from the bar for being a lawyer for over 50 years. When I first started practicing law, we had what were called justice courts. And just listening to the stories, I have a greater respect for that. Justice courts, you didn't have to be a lawyer, many were. But you had justice courts in every little community. I was practicing law in a county. Thank you. I was practicing law in a county that only had 78,000 people. And we had about 5 justice courts there. And I practiced before them. And if you had a problem, you'd go before the jury from that district. I had one case where a person was accused of drunk driving. Something like 11 officers testified against him, and he was acquitted. Clearly, the citizens of that city didn't think much about the police department. So it seems to me that we need to not only do the changes in terms of what's called the Policeman Bill of Rights, which is what keeps many things secret, but I really do think we need to think about our court system. I think that if we had a justice system the way you used to, folk would have a better chance of doing it quickly, with their own neighbors being the jurors. Then we have municipal courts, and we got rid of those. I think all of this, it was all a matter of trying to, quote, save money, end quote. But I think it's done a great disservice to the people. I think we need to save not only some of the statutes, but our court system. Thank you.
It's not going to be easy, and you can never give up. You have to keep trying. I mean, my major practice is in Oakland, and I don't know how many of you know what's going on down there, but we do have a consent decree over them, which is improving things at a glacial pace. And it's been going on for 13 years. John Burris and I are doing it there. And it just took it's going to take a long time. You have to keep coming back. The bill I talked about did pass the Assembly and it died in the State Senate. You have to keep going back to them and demand accountability. You have to stand up when they make these appearances and say, well, what is your vote? What is your position on 832.7 of the Penal Code, which basically was written by them? I've heard somewhere that even the people who wrote it think it should be changed. And you have to say, what is your position on police secrecy? What is your position on police accountability, and what are you doing in the legislature to deal with this? Then you have to deal with your council members because they are afraid. They're afraid because of police union money, and you have to make them more afraid of you. It's not easy. You have to keep coming at them, but it can be done. I've seen departments change. I've seen Richmond change. I never thought Richmond would change. In the late 70s, we sued them over and over again. At one point, I had 84 lawsuits against them. We had wrongful deaths and everything. But they had a chief come in, his name was Bill Lansdowne, and he called me in and he said, you know, I'm really going to change things here. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to go to the moon without a rocket ship. But I was wrong. He was right. He did change things. They can be changed. The last case I had in Richmond was a guy snorting cocaine, and this cop beat him up, and his partner, who was a trainee, turned him in. Okay, that was a miracle. That would have never happened in the 70s. It can happen. It does happen, but it's really, really hard. You have to be persistent. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a couple words about what each of our other panelists have said, in particular Justice Reynoso. When I spoke briefly for the acceptance speech or before the acceptance speech for Mr. Frank Gonzalez when he was chosen to receive an award for the #1 civil rights activist in Yolo County a year and a half ago, I pointed out that one of the galling and glaring problems in the Galvan case was a lack of exercise of prosecutorial discretion. I think that it's important to reiterate that because your district attorney is elected by you. Your district attorney is supposed to exercise what is called quasi-judicial discretion, which means they're not a judge, but they're supposed to look at a case and say to themselves first, is this the right thing to do? Should I be doing this? Not just simply prosecuting to the fullest extent possible, regardless of the facts of the case. That's wrong. So that's something you need to insist, is that your prosecutor exercises judicial discretion, and like Justice Reynoso said, we also need a change in the law so that judges can again exercise their own discretion, because that was taken away from them in the late 80s and early 90s. The other thing I wanted to point out, and again, I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to meet you before.
Jim Chanin.
Okay. I happen to know John Burris, and I worked with Fernando Chavez, and I haven't met Mr. Channer yet, so this is my opportunity. But as he was saying, another thing that I've been very concerned about is the fact that there's something called a pitches motion that we have to file as attorneys in order to see or learn about a police officer's background. But the horrible thing about the law in California when it comes to police secrecy, and I think that's a good term to use, is that even when you succeed on one of these motions, which is a request to the court to provide this information, you don't get to look. The defense attorney doesn't even get to look anymore at the file. Now, the officer's representative or the representative of the police department goes back with the judge in chambers, they look at the file, and you don't get to see it. Now, in the case of Galvan, there's a police officer for the West Sacramento Police Department who passed away just before the last trial, unfortunately, who had reported to us that when one of the officers responsible for the Galvan beating had some racist tattoos on his middle fingers, which of course you can only guess what that's used for, because the middle finger has a special, relevance in terms of gestures. But he was unwilling. Well, actually, he did tell us what they were. I'm not going to say what they are now. But he passed away, so he couldn't testify to this. We brought a pitches motion. We said we had this information that, in fact, we knew that there were these tattoos at the time this officer was hired by the department, and that they were subsequently removed but only after a citizen complained when they saw them. But in any event, this went before Judge White. Judge White, according to the law, went into chambers with the police officer department's representative, and she came back out. She was obviously angry, because anybody would be incensed to find out that, in fact, there were tattoos on this person's middle fingers. But, and this is a matter of public record, this was disclosed in open court. Yes, he did have tattoos, but the problem was that the person who did the background investigation for the West Sacramento PD officer was somebody that they hired as a contractor. This is not a person who worked for the department, but was an outside agent, and never bothered to describe what the tattoos were. So nobody knew what the tattoos were on his middle fingers, although it was alleged that they were racist. And this is terrible because this is the fellow who was responsible for making sure this was a good person that they were hiring, not somebody who had a past involved in white supremacy or whatever. So again, when we have police secrecy and a law that protects police to the point where we can't, as citizens, know about the people who are protecting us, then there's too much room for corruption, and there's too much room for the kinds of decisions that we might not agree with as citizens and then regret later. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
So, I have three things I want to say. First of all, I want to thank our panelists for taking time out on their Sunday evening, and in Tony's case, and Jim's case, coming out from the Bay Area second of all, I want to thank the Holy Cross Church for providing their facilities. They did it free of charge. Finally, I want to thank each of you for coming out on your Sunday evening and sharing your stories. So thank you very much. We'll be back in West Sacramento in May. We usually meet